This is the iPhone 11, and it's the cheapest iPhone without a home button that Apple is selling right now, and for the average non-techie person who just needs a solid and reliable handset that will last for many years to come, this is a match made in heaven. It's still got powerful flagship performance, solid cameras, and a battery life to last you all day. Although, as you may have heard, the display on here is most definitely lacking compared to other iPhones, and is a very controversial aspect, but we'll get to that. And so, having used this device as my main handset for a long period of time up until late 2020, in this video I'm going to be giving my thoughts on each aspect of the $850 iPhone 11 from a 2022 perspective, as well as whether it's the right device for you. And by the way, if you'd like to see something specific, the timestamps are in the description below. So starting off with the design, the iPhone 11 is pretty generic as far as iPhones go, and it's basically identical to its predecessor, the iPhone XR, apart from the dual rear cameras. But apart from that, it's got the same aluminium sides, glass back with wireless charging, and notched display with Face ID, so definitely not anything we're not used to, although there's absolutely nothing wrong in terms of how it looks. It's a very sleek and stylish phone, and considering it has 6 different color options of black, white, red, green, yellow, and purple, you're not limited at all in how you can express yourself. Personally, I'm quite a fan of the red, and I used to have the red one, but the yellow to me is also pretty cool. However, it is definitely worth noting that this phone is far from thin and light, and while carrying it around and using it, you'll definitely feel its heft in the hand, and if it's in your pocket, since it's got a thickness of 8.3mm and weight of 194 grams, so definitely on the chunky side, especially if you have a case on, although of course this in turn means that the phone feels exceptionally solid, comfy, and well built in the hand, just like you'd expect from an iPhone. What's more is that the 11 series was the last of the iPhones to sport the rounded edges instead of the straight sides that the new ones have, and I know I'm going to be hunted down with pitchforks and torches in the comments for this, but I don't like the straight sides at all. I think they feel a lot more uncomfortable to hold in comparison, and there's a reason Apple did away with them in 2014. Sorry not sorry. But if you're not a fan of them either, it's good to know that this phone's edges were the last to be round, so you can enjoy superior comfort in the hand. All in all though, the iPhone 11 looks and feels pretty good, although the heft may be a drawback for some people. Speaking of what might be a drawback for some people, or a lot of people in this case, let's move on to the display, which was, and still is, a very controversial aspect of this phone, and has caused many debates on whether something like this was acceptable on Apple's part. We get a generously sized 6.1-inch LCD panel with a resolution of 1792 by 828, along with a pixel density of 326 pixels per inch, and for the average person, it's a perfectly good display, and you'll definitely be satisfied with its sharpness and brightness and have no complaints. But if you dig deeper into the fine print, you'll discover that this display is actually below 1080p. In fact, it's only around 828p, which means that it can't show full HD content, plus it's LCD, so you're not getting the deep, true blacks like on phones with OLED displays. But it is a Retina display, which means that the pixel density is high enough so that you can't see any individual pixels, therefore everything is going to look sharp enough. Now of course, if you have no idea what any of those numbers or terms mean, then this isn't going to matter to you one bit. It'll be a great panel and you'll never even notice or care about these disadvantages. But before you say, well that's all very fine, of course it's alright that Apple's not putting their best display on their most average phone, but how can they still make it cost an arm and a leg? Isn't that just tricking unsuspecting customers? Well, no. The price tag gets made up for in other areas, like the great performance, cameras, as well as the reliability and seamlessness of iOS in general, which are the things that people are buying iPhones for in the first place, not because of their displays. So all things considered, you're actually getting a cracker of a deal for the $850. But if you're a tech spec nerd, you'll know that there are definitely more desirable panels out there. And so if you want the most top of the line display, then you're looking in the wrong direction. For me personally, this display was fine, it got the job done, but the viewing experience was leaps and bounds better when I upgraded to the iPhone 12 mini, which was OLED and had a much higher resolution. Although again, that's probably just because I geek out on tech specs, the average person is most likely not even going to notice or care. Honestly, this display just isn't as bad as a lot of people say it is. Oh, and another thing about this display is that the bezels around the edges are significantly thicker than on the iPhone 12s and 13s. So that's a minor thing I just thought I'd talk about, not a huge deal, but I'm gonna mention it there for those who are interested. But despite this display's raging controversy, it shows everything completely fine, and being a Retina display, you can't see any individual pixels from a normal viewing distance, which is the universal standard for good enough. But even if you despise this display with a passion, all of your hatred will simply melt away once you see how darn good the camera setup is on here. The shooters on the iPhone 11 consist of 12 megapixel main, ultra-wide and selfie cameras, and despite the hardware being 2.5 years old, they still do a fantastic job. Photos are still just so vibrant and clear, with colors that just seem to pop out at you, with tons of detail. And it's a setup that all around just works. It can take amazing photos no matter the situation, and the flagship quality in the cameras most definitely makes up for the mediocre display. Now, the 11 was a pretty significant upgrade over the 10R in terms of cameras. Of course, it was incrementally better, but it added quite a few new features. For example, an ultra-wide lens, which gives you a much wider field of view compared to the main camera. So if you want to capture something like a landscape or a group of people, you'll be able to get much more in your photo without having to take a step back. Now, admittedly, you do lose a little bit of quality with the ultra-wide lens, plus I personally would have preferred a telephoto camera on here, since I definitely use it more, but the ultra-wide is nice to have, and it still does a great job at capturing a larger area. Another upgrade that the 11 brought over the 10R's camera was night mode, and this gives you the ability to capture pretty much crystal clear photos in dark settings without using the flash. To me, this was not only incredibly useful, but it also worked extremely well, and even in pitch dark conditions, you could still get a reasonable result, and in just slightly darker than normal conditions, you wouldn't even know it was once dark at all. In terms of the selfie camera, the iPhone 11 does a great job, and this was also a huge step up, since the 10R's selfie camera was only a very outdated 7 megapixels in quality compared to 12 on here, and like the main lens, it'll do a terrific job. There's really not too much to say here, apart from that it works just as well as you'd want it to. Now, the iPhone 11 is able to record in up to 4K at 60 frames per second, and just like the photo quality, it is nothing short of phenomenal. You're going to have great colors, sharpness and stabilization, and whether you're an average Joe or an avid iPhone filmmaker, the 11 packs in plenty of punch. No, it doesn't have anything crazy like Dolby Vision or ProRes recording, but for the 99% of people who aren't even going to use those features once, it's not even going to matter, and all in all, you'll be more than satisfied. Something else that you'll be more than satisfied with here is the performance, which is still lightning fast as of today. The iPhone 11 sports the Apple A13 chipset along with 4GB of RAM, and as expected with an iPhone, it'll be able to handle anything you throw at it. This is still very much a top-end processor, and so you'll be able to do things like intensive gaming incredibly smoothly, and likewise, day-to-day light tasks like moving around the interface, texting, social media, and watching YouTube is also going to be an incredibly buttery experience. And the icing on the cake is that these specs will allow for many more years of software support in the future, at least up until 2026, if we're going off the fact that the oldest supported iPhone, the 6S, is guaranteed updates until this September, which equals an insane 7 whole years of support, and I'm pretty confident that this number will only increase in the future. But all in all, if you're worried that because it's an older phone that performance might not hold up as well, then don't be, because it more than does, and will most likely continue to fly, even on its final software version. Now, battery life on the iPhone 11 is another area that it absolutely nails, no matter what type of user you are. It's got a 3110 mAh cell inside, and with light to moderate use, the phone will easily get you through a full day with power to spare. And even for heavy users who use their phone a lot, or do tons of intensive activity, it'll still hold strong, and you most likely won't have to plug in until nighttime. Personally, I used my iPhone 11 mainly for social media, filming, and hotspotting my laptop, so I was by no means a casual user, yet there were only very rare occasions that it let me down, and I'm certain that'll be the same for you. And so, taking into account everything I've covered, let's find out if the iPhone 11 is right for you. Well, it's pretty obvious that this phone is marketed towards the average everyday user who wants a solid iOS experience with top-notch cameras, performance and battery life, but without the bells and whistles of newer models, but at the same time, not a completely watered down handset like the iPhone SE. Of course, the display is this phone's worst aspect, but considering that it's not actually an objectively bad display and is actually pretty decent, it makes the quality of all the other aspects seem pretty reassuring, if that's the worst one. And for the price of $850 brand new, you're more than getting your money's worth. I wouldn't recommend buying this phone second hand though, since the $400 to $700 you can find them for on used sites like eBay or Gumtree is pretty terrible value considering that you could just pay like $200 extra and get a new one. Now I get it, $200 can be a lot, and if you can find a really good deal, then I'd say go for it, but if you can, it would be the much better option to just buy brand new. And so all in all, the iPhone 11 remains a solid device in 2022, as it still packs in flagship performance, cameras and battery life, which again also makes it great value for the average Joe, just looking for a reliable handset that will last for many years to come. And if you can get through that sub 1080p display, which the vast majority of people will be able to, it's going to serve you fantastically for many, many years to come. And so that concludes my review of the iPhone 11 from a 2022 perspective. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful in any way, please make sure you drop me a like and subscribe to TechSpree for more reviews, insights, and the occasional unboxing. Thank you so much for watching. This is Tom with TechSpree, and I'll see you as always next time.